Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining me today. If you've been here before, welcome back. I see we have some people in the chat already. Teak, Hector, Two Steps Away, welcome. Breezer, Fulvio, glad you're here. Two Steps Away, reading your comment. Just watched the shadows video and didn't know you could apply shadows to group. Yeah, it's a cool little trick, so thanks for watching, and I'll talk some more about that video in the Q&A. A couple additional little fun shadow facts that I'll add in. A couple things I forgot to put in the video, some extra details there. But before we get too far today, I just want to say that I won't be streaming next week. I have an event on Sunday, so there'll be no stream, but a week after that, I should be back to the normal time, June 9th, I guess it will be. So just want to mention that up front. Next Sunday, there will be no stream. Hi, Amy. Hi, Suckmet Terra. And so today's topic, which for those who haven't been here before, usually I kind of cover a main topic, then I go over some questions and answers throughout the video. But if you have any questions, of course, you can ask them in chat about this topic. And today's topic is levels and curves. And I made a couple of videos about this, and we've talked about it in a couple of various places. But I wanted to do a live stream and talk about it kind of from the ground up. Hi, Bill. Hope things are going well in Florida. And kind of like some of the other topics we've talked about recently, like blend modes and masks and a couple other things, probably channels, I guess. This is one of those subjects that wherever you learn it, it's going to be applicable to so many other programs. Like, you know, we're talking about Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer today and levels and curves in that context, but it's really the same concept in Photoshop or Illustrator or, GIMP. It even goes into video programs like DaVinci Resolve. I haven't used Premiere, but I'm sure it's in Premiere, this concept. It's just a very common concept that is used a lot. And I think it'll be good to kind of review it today from the ground up, like I said. So I'll get started on that. So let's go to the first file here. I actually didn't upgrade the Affinity programs on this computer yet, so I didn't do the 2.5 release yet, still 2.4, but it shouldn't really make a difference for this video. So usually when I talk about this kind of topic, levels and curves and that kind of thing, I like to start with black and white first, just because it kind of keeps things simpler. I think instead of having like millions of colors, we can just kind of focus on black and white a little bit more. So I have this image here. Of course, it's a black and white landscape image. And the way we add a curve in the Affinity programs is that we add an adjustment layer. So that's these ones down here, the adjustments. So let me see if my zoom in works. Yeah. So down here, and I'll click that, and I'll add a curve. And let me just kind of show you basically what it does, and then later on we'll actually talk about like why it's doing that. So this is a curves adjustment here, and on a basic level, if I drag it up, it's going to lighten my image here. And if I drag it down, it's going to darken it. And you can also drag some parts up and some parts down. So I could drag part of my curve up, part of my curve down, and we can do like all sorts of variations in between, crazy things like that. But that's just kind of showing you essentially how it works. We'll talk about why it's doing that in a bit. But to begin with, a curve is an adjustment layer. So that's how you add curves in the Affinity programs. So let me add a curve again. Now you see this blue thing in the background, and that's a histogram. Hello, MB Harrington. Thanks for joining from England. And I think it's really helpful to understand what histograms are and how they work. We're going to see them in a couple places here. We'll see them in the levels interface. I mean, it's very important for understanding the levels interface. So let's actually talk a little bit about like a histogram specifically. And I'll open up another file here. Now there's actually a histogram view in Affinity Photo. I think it's just Affinity Photo. It's not an Affinity Designer. If you go to Window, Histogram. And what a histogram does is it counts the values in your image. So left to right is going to be dark to brightness, okay? So here I have this histogram, and my image here has just 4 big colors. I have black, white, and then a couple levels of gray in between. And if you look at the histogram, you can see it's actually counting those values. So you can see this big spike here. It's the count of the black pixels here. And then over here, if I hover over it, you can see what it say, level, let's see, 123, this here. So saying I have 750,000 pixels that are level 123, which is 1/4 of the image. So, and if I hover over that color, you can see it's the value 123. The colors here, that's the grayscale value of it. So that's why on this window, we had that spike here at 123. And then over here, we have another spike at level 201. So that's what this color is going to be here, 201. Let's prove that. So yeah, there we go. 201. So it's counting those 201 values. And then we have the white here, that's 255. So if I go back to my histogram here, it's this is the count of the white values, the 255. So what the histogram is doing is it's showing us the count of the levels of gray and black and white. Now, what I can do is I can make these different proportions. Right now, they're all the exact same height because I have each square as being 25% of the image. Let's take the black one. And if I stretch it a little bit, let's make it bigger. Notice how now black is the taller one. Okay, in the histogram, black is the taller one there because the other ones went down proportionally. And actually you can see, let's do this. Let me squish my histogram a little bit. Trying to make it so you can see both. So now we can see the histogram. There's a lot of black in my image. Let me click off that. So my black is most represented. There's a little spike here. That's this darkest gray there. And we have a little bit more here of that gray, and then we have the white on the end here. So it's kind of counting the levels, and it's counting the levels in our image. Let's look at another example. This time let's look at a gradient example. So here we have an even number of colors or values of gray from left to right. So on the left I have pure black over here. And then one by one I'm just kind of going over to the right side with levels of gray. And what you can see is that we essentially have the exact same number of all the colors because it's just a perfect gradient from left to right. Now you may notice there's a little bit of jagginess here. That's just because when you do a histogram, it's actually computationally tough to get an exact count. And there's some graphics processing efficiency shortcuts they do. So when you zoom into things, I don't know if you'll see it here, but you'll notice often it's not perfectly gradient left to right. If you can see this, let me zoom in. Like you can see there's little distortions and things like that, just for like efficiency purposes. So that's why you're seeing some jagginess here. But essentially, you can kind of, if you squint at it, we're seeing a perfect distribution of values from left to right. So that's what our histogram here is showing. Now maybe a more interesting image will give a better histogram. Let's look at our original image here. So now we have this black and white image here of these mountains. So let's look at the histogram for that. Window, histogram. And you can see this is a little bit more interesting, a little more realistic histogram, right? And you can kind of see what the parts of our image are happening here. I think that's a good balance there. So what I can see is like I have this big spike over here, a lot of light values there, and that's going to be the sky essentially up here. So when you look at this, you can kind of see like, okay, this, a lot of bright stuff up here, probably the sky, given how bright the sky is and how many pixels there are in that range. You can see there's a spike in dark things down here, probably like these trees and things like that. It's going to be that type of stuff there. Then you have kind of like this middle area of just, not a lot of pixels, but there's some, right? So these values in here. So that's what this histogram is telling us. It's showing us a distribution of the pixel values in our image. Now, this kind of relates to what I talked about when we showed our curves adjustment. So if I show the curves adjustment, we can see this is exactly the same thing. It's a histogram of the values in our image. And let me show them like side by side. So I don't know if I can resize this. I can't make it taller, but I can only make it wider. But you can see that our histogram is the same thing as our curves here. It's just distorted. They just kind of stretched it out taller. But this bump is this bump here. This value, this spike here is this spike over here. So our curves has kind of a built-in histogram into it. And that's what this value behind it is. Now with the curves, the histogram might not be as important. This is going to be much more important when we look at levels later. So it's just kind of extra information here, but we'll review this. We'll see this again when we talk about the levels. So the curves, what does this graph here actually mean? Like what's happening? So I showed when I raised it, it makes it lighter. When I bring it down, it makes it darker. So why is that happening? Let me bring up a image here. So when we look at the curves menu, what it's doing is it has like a left to right axis and a top to bottom axis. And left to right, like we've seen in several controls, is going to be the levels of black to white in our image. Like I said, it's a histogram, so the left side is going to be the blackest colors in our image, and going to the right is the brightest colors in our image. Now, up and down is also going to be the blackest level up until the whitest level here. Now, what our curve is doing by default, when it's a straight line, is it's just kind of mapping the input level down on the x-axis to the output color on the left. Let me show you a different slide here. So if we don't make a change to an image, you can see with a straight line, a value of 0.5 black, it's just going up, it's hitting our line, and the output is going to be 0.5 as well. So this straight line, 45 degrees, means there's no change. It's just the input, do this. Everything that's an input value is just going straight over to the same output value, like that. Okay, so white is going to white. I can't really draw that straight, but hopefully the point is going across. This dark color is just going to map itself there. So that's really what the values are doing by default. Now what we can do, of course, we can bend the curve. So when we bend the curve, what happens is we're taking an input value and we're raising it up to a higher value. So in this example, when I bring my curve up, what's happening is that all my values, instead of going to their corresponding value, they're going to a higher value like that. Okay. So even in the dark area here, normally this would be going over there, but now it's going to the higher level and going that way. So that's what happens when we're bringing the curve up. So let me know in the chat if this is kind of making sense or if you're confused by it. I'm going to show you examples, of course, as we go through it. Now, when I move something up a lot, let me copy the original image so you can see it. So the original is on the left and the change is on the right. So what happens when you move something up a lot is you can see over here, my curve is totally going to be white, and that's all this blown out white area over here. So what I've done is this is all going to be white. I don't know if I'm brave enough to try to write the word white. White. Okay, because it's hitting this 1.0 level here. So everything there is going to white. This top line is what I meant to do there. And that's why down here, you're getting this blown out image there. And do I have an example of moving down? Yeah, it's just kind of showing the histogram. So let me go back to our image here. So now you know when I drag this up, what's happening is my original values are being moved to a higher level here. And if I do that thing I showed at the end, usually you don't want to do this, but I'm just showing an example. This here, what it's doing is it's converting everything on this top, everything that's brighter than this value here is going to the white level. And you can do the opposite also. For example, I can drag it down. So notice like everything in this area is going to be black. So this is all black there. And that's going to be like this stuff, you know, all this kind of stuff there. That's all the blackness that's happening. Okay. Hi, IH. Thanks for joining. So a common adjustment that most people make, a lot of times people look at this and they'll say, okay, like that's all well and good. What am I supposed to be doing with curves? And there's a couple things you can do with them, but by far I think the most common thing people do is add contrast. And the way you can add contrast is just doing a simple S-curve. So contrast is technically you make the brights brighter and you make the darks darker. So the way we can do that is to make the brights brighter, I can drag this part up here. Now that makes my whole image brighter. What I can do, I need to do another thing to make the darks darker. I can click here and I can drag down here. So now my darks are darker, okay? 2 steps away, you say, curves is a bit intimidating. This is definitely helpful. Glad to hear that. Teak, you say this makes so much sense. Glad to hear that also. Glad it's making sense. So you can see this one is a little bit different. So above 50% for my values, I'm making it lighter. And you can see it's lighter there. And then below 50% for my values, I'm making it darker. And that's making these trees and all that kind of stuff darker. So this is adding contrast to our image. And the histogram in the back doesn't dynamically change, but I believe this will. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Let's reset this. So I'm glad that does that. So let me show you. So when I drag, watch where this curve goes when I drag up the brights. It goes to the right. So I'm shifting my brights to the right side. Now the whole thing shifted because I didn't do the bottom part yet. Let me drag down the dark part. And I can see I'm getting more of a separation here. More of it is going towards the dark side if you will. And this is kind of the definition of contrast, just getting these 2 spikes that are separate from each other. Let's look at a color example. And color works the same way. There's a little more stuff on the screen that will kind of maybe look a little confusing, but yeah. So they're just, on this one, they show you the other curves as well too, if you're interested in it, but you know, you don't have to go crazy with it. So let's do the curves again. I can make the brights brighter, like that. So that made the whole image brighter. Now here I'm gonna click, I'm gonna drag down, and the dark parts are becoming darker. So let's toggle before and after. So before, after, before, after. So you can see before you have kind of grayish haze. Then when we add the contrast, it goes away and it's a little sharper. And something I'll say is that a lot of times when people, they shoot photos and they get discouraged because their photos look really gray and things like that. But that's actually not a bad thing if you're gonna use something like Affinity Photo or something after it to post-process. Gray actually means you're getting a lot of information within the range of your photo that you took. So you have a lot of room to play with how you want to pull those values apart and get more contrast. When you take a photo and you have pure black and pure white in the photo, chances are you've kind of cut off some of the value range and you've given yourself less information to work with later on when you post-process. So don't get discouraged when you take a photo and you see it's like really gray, because actually that's kind of a good thing to work with. It gives you a lot of flexibility here. Maybe I'll talk more about that when we get to the levels section here. Now I won't go into it too much here, but you can also do this on a channel by channel basis. And I think I talked about that a little bit on a, maybe I did that in the channels video. Let's go to the, where's the gradient? So I'll add a curves to this. And I won't go like super into theory with this, but when we do something like adjust a channel individually, so here I can adjust the red channel individually, I can pull down the reds. And if I pull down the reds, I'm making I'm getting more of a cyan color there. And of course, if I increase the reds, I get more red there. And I would recommend, my channel's video talks more about this, so you can check out more about that there. I just want to let you know, like control wise, like that this is possible. You can bring down your greens to get more of a magenta. Of course, you can bring up the greens, and then you can also choose the blue channel down here. Bring it down, get the yellow, bring it up, get more of the blue effect there. But that's kind of beyond the scope. The more important thing here is really just the black and whites, or just like the basic level like we showed here, just doing it for all of it together. I guess here, like if I wanted to reduce the greens, let's say I wanted to make the trees magenta or something, I could go to green, I could pull down, and I could do that, right? So there's all sorts of things you could do with this if you wanted to. But I really think the basic adjustment that works for 99% of situations is just to make a quick little S-curve, like boost up the brights. I'm on the green one. I should do the master. Let me reset everything. Master. So boost up the brights and decrease the darks to give a little more contrast. And that's a quick way to use the curves. And let me bring up another one. Yeah, this kind of, just one more demo with this, with a portrait. This goes to what I was just saying about an image being gray. It gives you lots of area to work with. So if I look at the histogram here, I can see like it's basically captured the whole range of values here. So what I can do, there's no pure blacks, there's no pure whites. So that gives me the ability to pull these values apart the way I want to. So let's keep this up here. And let's add a curves adjustment. And we can do our patented S-curve. So I'll bring up the brights, bring down the darks. You can see we get a more contrasting effect going on there. And you can, you can play with it to suit whatever your needs is. I know sometimes I think these days I find the low contrast style is more in fashion, it seems. I see this a lot more where it's kind of like that lo-fi style, I guess. It looks more like a natural photo, but you can, add the contrast if you like. You can also change the blend mode if you like down here. And I think soft light is a good one. So let me toggle this on and off. So this is before, after, before, after. So I use the S-curve here, and then I change the blend mode to soft light. But you can do normal or whatever mode you want. So that's a basic crash course in how curves work. So let me know if you guys have questions on that. Like I said, the S-curve is kind of the standard way of doing it. And if you understand the left to right mapping of the bottom part being your inputs, can't fit it all on the screen. This is kind of like your original values. And then what you're doing is you're mapping it to something, to a new output value over here. And by default, you'll have a 45-degree angle, this line, just 1-to-1, but you can raise it and lower the curves as you like. So a concept that's related to curves are levels. So let's look at that. And some of the stuff we talked about already is going to apply to levels as well. Close these files, do some housekeeping here. So if you want me to review anything or answer any questions, feel free to post. So like I said, I like to start with a black and white image just because I think it makes things easier to understand at first. So let's do a quick levels adjustment. So once again, levels are an adjustment. So I'll click my adjustments over here, adjustments. And that's the top one. So there's that. And you kind of have all these sliders, and we'll talk about what they mean. The ones at the top, I'm just going to give you a demo now, and then we'll talk more about what they need. So if I drag the left side over, you can see what's happening is the dark side is getting darker, right? Let's put that back. And if I drag the right side over, the white level, if I click on it correctly, you can see it's starting to get all blown out and white like that. Now let's view the histogram again. So this is what I was talking about earlier. There is a built-in histogram to this tool. So this thing up here is exactly the histogram we looked at before. So I'll show you that. Window, histogram. And this over here on the left is exactly the same as this over here on the right. So if I drag this one on the left, you'll see the histogram, the actual result of the histogram is starting to change, okay? And I'll talk about why that's happening in a moment. Let me go back to a gradient example here. Just let me show you the bars. So like I showed you the image before with the 4 solid colors. I made this diagram here to give you another simplified view of how levels work before we look into a more complicated image. So let me go to the adjustments and levels. So this histogram shouldn't be too much of a surprise if you kind of follow how we talked about histograms before. We have these colors here. There's 6 of them, so we have these 6 spikes. So watch what happens as I drag the black level. You can see there's a slider here, this slider. And as I cross each spike, the color is turning pure black. So watch the third one. It's going to be this one here. It goes to pure black. And I cross the next spike, and it goes to pure black. And I cross the 4th spike, it's pure black. I don't know if the white will be pure. Yeah, it does pure black. Sometimes it can't slide to the exact edge. So what was happening there, let me do it again in slow motion. Each of these spikes represent one of these bars. As I go left to right, we're basically redefining where the blackest part of our image is. Excuse me. So as I go left, I'm saying, okay, this level of gray, once I pass it, that is the new blackest color in my image. And as I get closer to this other one, this spike here, that's this color here, as I pass it, my black level says, now that is the blackest level of gray. Now that's going to be the blackest level in your image. And I keep going up, and that's essentially what's happening. I'm redefining where the black point is in my image, okay? So I'm basically saying, okay, I want that level of gray. I want that to be the new blackest part of my image. And the white part goes exactly the same, it just goes in the other direction. Let's put this here. As I move the white level over, you're going to see I'm redefining where the white point is in my image. So as I go, I cross over the spikes. That's the new white point. That's the new white point. And that's the new white point. Hey, Teak, glad you think it's cool. Yeah, sure, you can use it for your class if you want. Yeah, send me a message later. I can send you some of these files if you like. So I'm defining the white point here. And I can do both of them at the same time. So I can actually define. So I have the white point over these 2 lines here. I did that. I can actually go this way on the black level. And I can go in both directions, right? Yeah, if you cross over, it kind of gets crazy, but you can do both of these at once. And one caveat I want to say about this is, like, as you approach the line here, it starts to have an effect. So it's not 100% a pure threshold. So you can see as I approach it here. You have how to message me. If you check the about page on my YouTube, it has my, you can like click the contact button and it'll show you my email. So that's one way you can contact me. So I'll see it if you do it that way. And if you can't do it that way, leave a comment on my video or something. I'll find a way to get back to you. So yeah, so like what I was saying, like as I approach this, it's still getting brighter. So it's not like a thresholded effect where suddenly nothing happens and then it just goes pure white. You are going to be kind of getting the darkness is shifting to the right and the lightness is shifting to the left. But that just helps the image look more consistent. And no problem. And let's look at the gradient example here. So now I have a gradient. Let's go to our levels. How are we doing for time? 12:30. And once again, we have our kind of jagged gradient here. Like in theory, it should be perfectly straight, but in reality, just the way it optimizes things, you're gonna have a little bit of jagginess. But as I bring the black level, watch how the black part moves from left to right. So I'll drag it over, and the black is moving slowly over to the left, or from left to right, I should say, yeah. Until I get all of it. So I'm redefining where the black cutoff point is. And I can do the same thing for the white side. I can push the white side all the way to the left. And I can do both at once. And this example is a little more clear doing both at once. So I can push the black side over here, maybe there, and then the white side I can actually start to get in there, and then we can actually have like a really tight little transition there if you want. So you can see this is my kind of point of common grayness, I guess you want to call it, or not. So Fulvio, reading your comment. Yeah, I don't know if there's a pure eyedropper like there is in Photoshop. I was looking for that, and if anyone knows, let me know. I don't think it exactly has that. So there's like in a Photoshop, what you can do, like when you're at this point, you can like click and you can say make that my black point. And I don't see one on this interface here. So unfortunately, I think it's an option that's not quite there. I looked into this once a while ago, And I haven't looked into it again recently, but I don't see an option for that. It would be cool. It should be an addition, like it should be a basic thing they should add. I don't know why it's not there. But to kind of clarify his point, what you could do is I could click somewhere on this. Like what I could do is I could click here if in Photoshop, because they make that my black point. And what it does is it would automatically just like jump the slider there to automatically set the black point like that. And I don't know if that's possible in Affinity. But if it is, let me know in the chat or the comments. I just haven't found a way to do it. Sorry. So, yeah, I just want to talk about the levels for now. I'll talk about the outputs in a bit. So let's go back to our image. And let me delete and I'll re-add it. So we can see right now is that actually in this image, excuse me, there's no pure black and white actually. If I go to the pants, like this really dark, but it's actually not pure black yet. If I go to the sweater, it's not pure white. Hi MTM, doing good. Thanks for joining. Glad you're here. There's no pure white there. But if I go to my levels, this is kind of the point I was talking about where you can actually get rid of, you can actually take your grays and make them pure black or pure white. So what we're seeing in this histogram here is we're seeing that there is no true black. So what this gap means is that there's actually no true black in our image. This line here is just this slider. It's not actually the count. So it says like there's no true black in our image. And there's actually no true white either. So this is like there's no true white in our image. So a lot of times what you want to do is to actually add true black or true white. You drag the black level up over there. Teak, this is your sister? Yeah, she's a model, huh? And so I cut the black level out there. And then on the white side, I can actually bring this in and I can start getting my pure whites there. Okay. And a lot of time, this is what you want to do. And this helps you actually, again, get more contrast, but kind of bring out those strong blacks and strong whites. So now if I look at the histogram, window histogram, you can actually see, it's a little trying to show, but we have almost pure blacks over here and almost pure whites over here. If I drag it in even more, notice how my histogram is sliding. So now I'm getting pure white there because I brought this white level over these gray levels here. And I can get pure black here. I can bring my black level past these pants there. Those are the pants. It's hard to show everything at once. But so this was the original histogram, this whole thing here. When I alter it, now I'm actually kind of stretching my image in a way to these black levels and the bright sides. Okay. So can you show how the curves work in the? Can I show how the picker works in the curves panel? Sure. Let me check that out. So go to curves, and I believe if I do that, picker. Yeah. So it's been a while since I've looked at this feature, but if I make a point here, if I take the picker, what is it exactly doing? Oh, so it's finding the point on my image. Yeah, so if I take the picker here, so this is back to the curves in case you didn't see that I made that change. When I take the picker, when I click somewhere, it's choosing the point on my curve that matches that value. So if I choose some bright area here, if I click there, it's going to probably choose somewhere up there. So if I do picker here, yeah, now I'm in that top area. And I can choose whether or not I want to raise that level like that, or whether I want to bring it down. Okay. So let me reset. So if I choose the pants, right? The pants, if I click in here with the picker, it's going to automatically create a point somewhere in there. So if I click picker here, so I'm at that very low point down there, I can make it brighter. as I drag the mouse, it's dragging that point, and as I go below, it's making it darker, like that. So to kind of Fulvio, this is as close as I could see to like the black point chooser that you were talking about for the other thing. I did know this thing existed, but for the levels one, I just don't know if there's a black point chooser for that. So 2 steps away. Hope this answers your question. Let me know if that wasn't clear or if anyone else has a question about that. So let me delete this. So let's go back to our levels. And where did I leave off with that? What else do I want to tell you guys about levels? Yeah, so like I said with the curves, the main thing you want to do is that S-curve adjustment. Usually with levels, the main thing you want to do is get rid of these gaps over here. Now everything is going to be depending on what your artistic purpose is, what you're trying to do, but usually when you see gaps like this, you want to drag the black level over a bit, get rid of it there. And when you see lots of like white or gaps on the white side, you can drag the white level over here. And that's going to give you more of a pure white. So, you know, your mileage may vary depending on what you're trying to achieve, but typically that's what you want to do with these levels up here. Now let's look at the output levels down here. Gamma just kind of like in one shot, just kind of drags your whole thing left or right. Let me reset. So if I take the gamma, I can drag it. I'm kind of like dragging my whole curve in one direction. So it's kind of like a brightening or darkening thing. Yeah, so Michael, talking about the gamma right now. So looking at the histogram, it kind of shows what it's doing. And I guess my description of it would be it maintains the relative values of things, but you can kind of shift them left or to the right. Okay, so I think the best way to do it is to have the histogram open and to move the gamma back and forth. So let me reset it. So as I move the gamma, you can see that the relative relationship between the curves kind of stays the same, but I'm just kind of shifting the whole thing left to right. So let's go this way. So I gave myself basically more space down here in the bottom, so I kind of shifted it to the right that way. And if I go the other direction, I'm giving myself more space kind of at the top, essentially, is what I'm doing there. So it's still keeping the curve, but it's kind of dragging it in one direction or the other. Mathematically, that's kind of the best way I can explain it. So you're saying in DaVinci Resolve, it edits the midtones. Yeah, I've used I've used the scopes and the gamma in DaVinci Resolve a little bit. I'm not sure. I don't know enough to say how it differs from what this is doing here. I think in DaVinci Resolve, if I remember correctly, it might be more of like like, let me reset this. If I remember DaVinci Resolve correctly, I think when you edit the gamma, it's almost like it only affects the middle area, and it kind of like locks the highlights and the shadows. So you're kind of like playing with the middle area, but the top and bottom are locked. And I think from what I'm seeing here in Affinity Photo, it doesn't seem like it's actually like locking things. It seems like it's kind of like shifting the whole curve in one direction or another. But in my brief usage of DaVinci Resolve, like I said, I think the gamma is kind of only affecting the middle area. So hope that helps. But yeah, what I would say is like open up the histogram with your image and kind of you can see how it's working and in Affinity Photo. So let's see. I showed this one. Let's open up another file. Yeah, this is just a color version. It kind of is going to make the same point that I made before, which is that when you have an image like this, what you can see is there's no pure blacks here and there's no pure whites. So to make it pop a little bit more, we can drag our black level over. And we get more of the pure blacks there. And we can drag the white level over. And we're going to get brighter whites. So before, after, before, after. And just like the curves, you can also just do channel basis. So if I want to do the red, if I want to do, let's say green. So we have lots of green here. If I want to make a magenta, I believe I bring up the black level. Yeah. So you can do it channel by channel if you want. When you do this, what essentially you're doing is I'm taking all the green and I'm making it black, and that's causing it to shift more towards the magenta side of things. That's kind of like that complementary relationship between green and magenta I talked about. I believe in the channels video. If we go to red, if I bring the black level up for red, it's going to turn more cyan, like that. If I bring the white level up, it's going to make it more red. So there's those kind of relationships. So that's how that goes. But in this example, I just wanted to show you how the kind of like the basic adjustment you can do. Just bring up the black to get rid of that gap on the left. Bring up the white, bring down the white to get rid of that gap on the right. So Michael, yeah, that's how you understand Resolve 2. Cool. Yeah, it does seem a little bit different in photo, Affinity Photo. So let's look at one more. Yeah, so now let's talk about the output levels. So what we've been talking about is how do you take things that are kind of gray and make them pure black or pure white. What if we want to do the opposite? What if we want to take something that's black and make it grayish or so? And that's where the output levels come into play. So let's look at this image. So I chose this image because we have very black hair and we have very white coat here. What the output level is going to do is it's going to determine the value of our darkest color or the value of our brightest color. So the output black level, let me just dial it up here. What I'm doing is I'm saying take the blackest black and make it this level of gray. So this is now the darkest color I want to have in my image. And that's, you can see that's what's happening here. As I bring the output black level up, I'm getting more of this, the blacker parts are going more towards the gray. I'll bring it back down. And if I go the other way, I'm saying take my white value here, take the whitest white and make it this level of gray here. So that's probably the coat here. So the brightest color that can appear in my image is this gray here. And I can do both at the same time. So I can like really dial it in. This would be the definition of a low contrast image here. And let me show you the histogram because it'll be very clear what's happening. The famous histogram. So as I drag the black level and the white level in, what you're going to see is this histogram is going to be crunched into the middle. So let me bring the black level up. You can see basically what I'm doing is the opposite of what we did before. I'm adding a lot of space onto this level here. I'm bringing everything up. I'm bringing the darks up into the middle. And then with the white level, I'm adding space onto the right. And this kind of goes with what we know about contrast, right? When I said low contrast is when you just crunch everything into the middle, this middle here. So this is about as low contrast as you can get. Like you can barely see the image. So I've set the black level and the white level out there. So that's what this does. I'm not sure practically how often I use this one. I don't really use it that much. Maybe if you have like an image where you know you're gonna be printing it and you're not gonna have a pure black, maybe you wanna see like what it looks like when you know you're not gonna have a pure black color or something like that. But it's just another option here to do the black levels. And let's see. Yeah, this is I guess I just wanted to show you the difference between the black white level and the output level. So if I take the black white level. So again, this is the one where I can make the darks darker. I can make the whites whiter. This doesn't look great in this image, but you can see the effect happening. That's the effect of changing the black levels here. I made the black part like way darker and the bright parts, you know, blowing out a lot of the other grays compared to the bottom slider. Can I fit this all on one screen? Let's do this. So that's what happens when you bring it to the middle on that one. So the black-white level is generally going to increase contrast, and the output level is going to decrease contrast. So that is basically how the levels work. And I said, I think for levels, what you want to do is get rid of the, you generally want to get rid of the gaps at the top of your image there. So that's kind of the main goal of levels. So how are we doing for time? 45 minutes. Yeah, so that's essentially the introduction to curves and levels. If you have any questions, again, you know, you can ask here or leave a comment on the video. And that kind of gives you a basic introduction of like how they work, like what these controls actually do and how you want to think about them. With the curves, I recommend think about the S curve. With the levels, I recommend thinking about, do you want to get rid of these gaps at the at the bottom and the edge. But if you understand the histogram, and it's just kind of playing with that and seeing how changing these dials affects that, you're kind of most of the way there, I think. And like I said, if you want to dive deeper into like changing individual channels, that's another thing you can do. I recommend watching my channels video to understand how that works. So with that, I'll move on to the weekly questions. Close these guys. Let's see what questions we got this week. So yeah, so the Affinity, so I got a question about the masks, and someone said, I'm trying to read this question here. So this person asked a question about the mask video, and they said they're not able to get the masks showing. I think they're on a Mac, and let me see here. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Is let's open a file here. If you right click on this mask layer here, you get these options. And this is right clicking. I'm on a Windows PC right now, but she said she couldn't see it on a Mac. I think on Mac, maybe you need to hold Option. So just make sure, like, it should be there, but if you're having problems seeing it, I think it's a Mac. I think it's Option on the Mac. Thanks, Hector. Glad it was useful. So someone watched also my masking video, and they said, how do you get the pixel layer behind your masked images? What's going on there? The pixel is actually transparency, and I'll use this image here. If you erase something, you will get or you mask it either way. Where's my eraser? You'll get the checkerboard pattern there. I don't know if this happens by default. I think you may need to do document setup. Transparent background. Yeah, if you don't have that selected, you're going to see white in the background. But if you do document transparent background, you'll see the checkerboard. I like the checkerboard better. But make sure this might not be available by default, so check that out. So yeah, the checkerboard you see when I mask things, that's just the default transparent background, how it looks. But make sure you have that selected here, document transparent background. Because it might not be there by default. I'm not sure. Thanks, Muriel. Oh, MB Harrington says, I'm correct. Yes, you have to hold Option on a Mac. So, okay, yeah. I do have a MacBook, but usually I use my Windows machine. So sometimes I'm not quite sure what all the hotkeys are to get certain things shown. Excuse me. So I got this question, is there an option to invert the pixel mask in Affinity Designer? And unfortunately the answer is no. In Photo it's so easy. You just create something. Excuse me. If I create something, I just paint something. Excuse me, I'm starting to lose my voice. And if I had a mask, it's very easy to invert the mask. You just hold Alt and click on it, or actually no, you click on it, you push Control I, and that inverts the mask. So I showed the mask here, Control I. Unfortunately, in Affinity Designer, that just doesn't work for some reason. I don't know why. They should do that. So what I did notice is that you can copy and paste masks from Photo to Designer. So I'd recommend maybe make the mask in Affinity Photo and then just copy and paste it over to Affinity Designer that way. And or if you made it already in Designer, copy it to Photo, invert it, and then copy it back to Designer. So that's one option to get around that. So I got a question from Bill. Bill, I think you were here earlier. Not sure if you're still here, but you said, do the new features work in Affinity 2.5 on the iPad version? You're saying you can't get variable fonts to work. Yeah, according to the website, they work. I saw you posted a follow-up comment that you just can't get it to work. My recommendation would be to post on the Affinity forums. There's a forum there where you can show the bug reports. Let me bring it up here. Affinity forums. Yeah. So it's forums forum.affinity.serif.com. If you Google it, it usually comes up, but they do have one where you can report problems here. So Affinity on iPad questions. I'd recommend posting it there. And you can see maybe someone else has already posted it there about the variable fonts not working. Probably there's like a ton of new posts here because people are discovering things that might not work in Affinity 2.5. But yeah, like I said, I haven't used it too much, but if it's definitely not working or you keep having problems with it, you can try posting here. Usually they're pretty good about responding to things, I find. They're pretty active on that forum. And is this the same question? Yeah, I think I copied it twice. Yeah, so I was just saying, yeah, I tried the Affinity forums there. So I released a video yesterday on drop shadows. Got some comments, some nice suggestions too. A couple things I forgot to mention. Joe Gaddis said, I forgot to mention the offset tool. Yeah, that's a cool thing. Let me show you how that works. It was right there and I just kind of neglected to mention it. So on, you can add the drop shadow here. So let's do this. I'll do a star. And then the normal way you add a drop shadow is you just go to the effects down here. That's the layer effects. I'll click that. And you can say outer shadow. Let me get this all showing. Yeah, okay. So you click this button, outer shadow, and you can give it a radius, and you can do the offset. But there's this cool offset tool where if you click this, you can actually manually drag this shadow around. So it's much more convenient than maybe playing with these things if you don't want to do that exactly. So you can actually use the offset tool to move the shadow around as you want. And what it does is it dynamically updates these settings as you do that. Teak, I'm reading your comment. Okay, you add me on Twitter. I'll message you on Twitter then too if you added me. I'll see that you added me and I'll just send you a message there. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So that's this offset tool. Just click on that and you can manually move the shadow around if you don't want to fiddle with the things up here. Another cool thing I forgot to mention is that you can actually add multiple shadows. So for some of these effects, when there's a plus button, you can add them multiple times. So I'll click a plus here and it actually added another shadow. So there's two shadows. You see it got darker because they're over each other. But let me click the offset tool and I can actually move it around. So you can have multiple shadows for an object here like that. Just click the plus. If you want to get rid of it, you can click the X to remove the effect. So so that's a way to do that. Yoda's Ghost, much love for the tutorials. Thank you. Glad you like them. Cool name, by the way, Yoda Ghost. So yeah, so offset tool, you can move the shadow around. That's pretty cool. And you can also add multiple shadows. So you can click duplicate and you can go and move it around there. Let's go back here. Was that it? Let's see. Another thing is that, yes, I got a comment that the fill is not the same as the transparency. If you dial back the transparency, then the layer effects disappears. Yeah, so let me show you what that comment is about. So there's something called the knockout effect. So if I have my star here, let me add a shadow to it. Let's just add a shadow. Offset tool, let's make it nice and big. So what you can do is you can actually, the fill opacity down here, I can take this and I can make my shape completely transparent. And it will keep the shadow will stay there 100%, but the shadow is being blocked, but it will stay there. If I click out the fill knocks out shadow, it'll show the whole shadow. So basically the fill knocks out shadow, the star is invisible, but its shape is still blocking the shadow is what that does when you check it. When you uncheck it, the whole shadow is being shown. Now this is based on this fill opacity here on the FX menu. So his comment is saying, yes, when you change the opacity over here, this makes the shadow and the star both opaque and eventually disappear completely. So just keep in mind that this opacity setting, when you do this, is different than the fill opacity down here. So it's going to be different there. So a little point I forgot to mention in the video. And I think that's all for this week I have. Reminder, there's no stream next week, but I should be back the week after it. Just have something going on next Sunday, so I won't be able to make it here by noon. But I'm kind of thinking like what my next topic will be. I've been looking into the Liquify persona, so I might do the next live stream on the Liquify persona. And I think that's an interesting topic. I always kind of wonder like what are the main uses of it, and I think there's some cool uses of it. So perhaps we'll talk about that on the next live stream. And of course, if you have any questions, if you're watching this on a rerun or you still have some questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I check the comments every day and I try to respond to them or bring them into these live streams to answer live on screen. So hope this was useful. 2 steps away reading your comment here. So you always use Windows and 2.5. So you're saying you've got more fonts. Yeah, the variable fonts is a cool option. And yeah, so and there's also that announcement about the ARM support, which doesn't really affect me, but I think for some people it'll really improve their the processing time and stuff. So I saw that announcement. Whoops, I saw that announcement this week for the new support. No problem, Teak. And 2 steps away. Hope you guys enjoy the time away too. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of your weekend, and I will see you in 2 weeks, or probably I'll publish some other videos in the meantime. But thanks for watching, and see you next time. Have a good day.